if you run it like a business, it's not so overwhelming.
100%. Great point.
Pain.
Yeah.
I would recommend finding an automated system that works really well for you.
Huge tip.
Will eliminate 80% of the operation nightmares that you have to deal with in this business.
Get it on a platform and start integrating it and learning it, because it's a game changer. Welcome to Courageous Stewards, the podcast where legacy meets leadership.
We believe stewardship isn't just about managing resources. It's about multiplying impact, honoring purpose, and building with eternity in mind. Each week, we dive into business-focused discussions on real estate investing on a foundation of faith and family.
We have a desire to inspire listeners with a heart to reclaim their time, talents, and treasures for something greater. Whether you're growing your portfolio, leading a business, or a family, we need to become the best version of ourselves.
This is your space to gain wisdom, walk in courage, and steward what matters most.
Let's build what lasts. Let's lead with love.
Let's become courageous stewards. All right, guys, welcome back. We're here on episode 9, and we're going to be talking about net operating income, which a lot of investors will refer to as NOI, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, as well as operations. Operations are really vital when you're talking about managing rental property. You want to have a system and a structure in place in order for things to go more smoothly. If you're just going willy-nilly at everything that arises, you're going to find yourself in a lot of situations and problems that you don't know how to resolve. But before we get started with that, away from the mics, we were talking a little bit about Sean's experience over the last couple months and how he's had to transition from several different things and kind of shelve the others while he was real deep into something specific. So I wanted him to talk a little bit more about that and tell you guys kind of what it is that he has experienced over the last few months and how his life has changed from month to month to month.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an interesting few months. So I was heavy in real estate sales, and we were doing an Airbnb, and I lived there for 2 months doing renovation. It was just all consuming. So you have to, like you said, table some things because there's not time to do everything. And it was important that we got that turned around. But now that it's on Airbnb, it's working out great. We've got it filled pretty much for the next 2 months, which I was pretty surprised about. So now that that's done, it's weird because I lived there for 2 months and now I can't go there because we have guests. So it's kind of strange how that turns around so quickly. But going through that and working on trying to lock up this storage deal that we're working on and handling some of that information and communication back and forth with the broker and the seller and everything and the lot split and all the stuff involved with what we're doing, trying to get that deal done. So I've kind of pivoted because my bandwidth has opened up since we were able to get the Airbnb live. So I went back to real estate sales. Well, I had a great listing from somebody I knew, which was great. They gave me an opportunity, but I ended up getting fired from that listing. So that's always fun. I think what I did looking back is I needed to change my perspective on pricing, and I think I priced it a bit high. It sat longer than the seller wanted. So they switched agents and lowered the price and stuff, which makes perfect sense. I had a lot of learnings in that.
So when you say I got fired from a listing, explain what that actually means, because most people don't even know.
It's a phone call or a text. So say you've got a listing contract with a client, you've got the house on market. Well, there's going to be an expiration date on there based on your agreement. Sometimes you can terminate in the agreement as long as both parties sign. Well, my expiration was coming up. And so basically what it looked like was when I was requesting an extension and a price reduction, I was getting crickets and it was just no. And they ended up letting me know. They were direct with me, which I appreciate. They told me, like, we're switching and we're going to go with somebody else and lower the price. And I understood because my goal is to deliver.
Yeah.
And if I didn't deliver for you, there's no heartburn if you're switching.
Do you think that it had something to do with the fact that your focus was a little more on some of the other things that you had to deal with?
Absolutely.
Particularly the B&B?
Absolutely. In that season, and I told my wife that even, I owned parts of that drop ball, and I look back now and I'm like, man, I could have did better.
Yeah.
Maybe I could have pushed harder on sales. Maybe I could have lowered that price earlier on using some market data and drove more into that. So that was on me. So looking back, I could have done a better job and I'd still had the listing. That's how it is. That's accountability. It's not their fault. I didn't deliver. And I don't want you to work with me if I'm not delivering for you. So it was kind of one of those moments. And when that happens, it kind of stings And so I felt like, man, do I keep going? Are we growing this thing or do I? And then, 30 minutes later, it's like, no, I'm going back to my roots, which was when I first started in real estate. So I've been doing real estate for just over a year now. I think I'm in 14 months. I've moved almost $2 million in volume.
Realtor real estate
Yes.
is what you're referring to.
Yeah, realtor
You've been
real
a
estate.
realtor for 14 months?
For 14 months.
Got
I've been
it.
a licensed real estate agent with Amerimaid Realty, and I've sold almost $2 million in real estate in that 14 months. So
incredible.
I can sell some real estate. And I'm willing to do the work. So I went back to my roots. That was studying, and I cold call. I know that's a cringy word and a lot of people don't like that, but I think you got to do the work early on. You can't go into real estate sales with the 3 to 5 year expectation. You know what I mean? You'll get there. You'll build a network. You'll build referrals and clientele. That doesn't happen in year one. That's why statistically 97% of realtors quit within the first 2 years.
That's unbelievable.
There's such an uphill climb, and if you're not doing the hard work at first, you sit and wait for your phone call. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
My approach to working with clients is just a matter of serving. I don't call and push the sales. I don't tell them they need to work with me. I don't overpromise all these things I can't do. It's just, what do you need? Why are you guys selling? How maybe can I help? What are your concerns with using an agent to have you help sell your home? So it's a lot more conversational. And even on the call, my call is not there to get somebody to sign a piece of paper. It's that maybe we can continue talking. Maybe they reach back out later on if they're not having a lot of luck for sale by owner or whatever their situation is. But I love being on the calls because you get a lot of new. Everybody's different, but there's objection strategies and things like that you can use. And it's not necessarily a situation of manipulating the call or anything or trying to trick somebody. It's informing them.
Yeah.
I think a client or a customer, they're not interested in games or stories, but if you can show them data, results, stats that indicate, and what you're trying to do for a client is create certainty. That's what they want. They put it behind these facades of, well, I want to talk to more agents, or I'm concerned about this, right? Or I'm going to test the market, right? All these things they say, all they want is certainty. So your job on that call is to just give them information, give them data, give them expertise, give them energy to let them know, I can do this, we can make this work, you don't have to worry about it, and here's what the numbers show. Because a lot of these objections are the same. Commission's a big one. And so you can let them know, like statistically, you're likely going to get 15% more for your house if you are listed on the MLS, because we have a buyer exposure of 85% versus the 9 to 10% you have for sale by owner. Well, now all of a sudden, okay, you got to pay some commission, 5 to 6, 7%. But since you're getting 15% more, it's an investment, not so much a cost. And they talk about price all the time or how much they can get. What they're really concerned about is what they net. And so I share that number with them. I give them an entire breakdown of the list price, what I'm assuming we're probably going to get from an offer, the commissions in there, and then I actually tell them what their net is going to be. So when we get to the closing table, they're not surprised and frustrated that we started it with this much, and then we get to the closing table, then I'm going to get my compensation, and they go, I didn't know this is all I was going to get. Like, I want them to know that going in. That way there's a degree of comfort, trust, and transparency through the process.
Right. And having a realtor really is a lot about efficiency, right? They can list the property as a for sale by owner. They can go through the process of trying to sell it themselves, not having all of the resources and avenues that you might have as a realtor. And by giving you the opportunity to sell that property for them with all the resources that you have behind you, the efficiency just goes through the roof.
It does.
It becomes very likely that you're going to be able to sell their property when maybe they weren't able to.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the way I understand this is that you primarily are a seller's agent, or want to be more on the seller side.
I primarily focus on listings. I do.
There you go, listing agent.
Yep, I like listings. I love working with buyers, and I'll absolutely work with buyers anytime. But I do try to focus on listings.
Okay.
But it's a combination of, so they'll do it for sale by owner, and it's the things that I think people aren't aware of in the process of selling a home. You absolutely can go for sale by owner. I've seen people successful at it. They sell. But there's so many factors in that.
Yeah.
So if you're reaching for price, it's going to be tough. And then you have to know what to do with your buyers when they do come through. I have heard so many stories on buyers coming into these for sale by owners, and everybody gets excited and they're like, "Oh, we really love it. We're going to buy this house. We are ready. Just give us a couple weeks to take it down. Don't leave it listed. We're going to get together and we're going to get this offer in." And they don't come. There's nothing there, Or maybe they do follow through, and you are getting closer, and then it's okay. Now they go to the bank. Now they can't get pre-approved. Well, you just took that listing down for 2 weeks and you could have had a buyer on it. That's a lot of times where the frustration is the tire kickers. So being a licensed agent, what I do for my clients, I tell them you're going to hear from me for showings, feedback, and offers that have pre-approvals, because it's not worth anybody's time to talk about these numbers that somebody texted me. It's like, I need a pre-approval letter. I love the offer. I think the sellers might consider that. Give me a pre-approval, and then I'll write up the offer, and we'll get that over to them. But it's just a matter of not floundering in it. And I think sometimes it seems easy on the surface, and you get into it. And some do a great job. I've seen some really fantastic Zillow listings where it's like, man, the photos look good, the description's good, but sometimes it's those small pointers that can help change the outcome of it selling or not selling. What I find fascinating is just be transparent and be honest and use data. So I had cold called 10 people the other day, and I think I have 2 leads generated. 2 really nice people. I'm hoping we work together. And I'm telling you, the one lead that I generated that wants me to call back today after he speaks with his wife, I told him, I said, I'm going to list this for $125,000 less than what you have it listed on Zillow for. So we talked some more. I told him exactly what the data was showing in his market and stuff. And he's like, I don't disagree with you. He's like, we actually kind of put it out there just to see what we could get. He's like, let me talk to my wife and let's talk tomorrow. I said, absolutely. I think they value transparency and honesty.
Sure.
You want as an agent, be like, yeah, oh yeah, we can get $400,000 for that house. I'm absolutely, whatever you want, man, I can do it. But then what you do is you go through the process, you list the home, it doesn't sell, you don't get a lot of showings. They end up getting frustrated, discouraged, and you didn't serve anybody.
Right.
Nobody's happy. And that's not how I want to conduct myself. If you want that agent that's going to give you that padded picture of what it's going to look like and that you're going to get tons of money for your home, I may not be the right agent, because I'm going to give you data and try to price it around there. Because my goal is to get to the closing table with you and get the money in your pocket so we can move on to the next thing.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I think that's probably a good transition to move into what we're talking about today, because you laid out how you use data and information to come to a conclusion that the seller is happy with, that you really feel like you can get for their benefit. And a lot of that is true also in the real estate investment space from the perspective of operations. The better you are in your operations, the more value you're going to bring to the table, the better rents you're going to get, the more profitable your properties are going to be. And ultimately, you will see your properties increase in value as well, depending on your efficiency. So I kind of want to dive into the operations side of what we're talking about today, and maybe you can give us an overview, I guess, of what operations look like when you're an investor. And this really can be very broad, I guess, because there are so many different spaces that you're going to be in as an investor potentially. Now, that being said, I would encourage people to narrow in on 1 or 2 areas that your heart is really telling you to be in and study and figure those out, because real estate can go so many different directions. It's unbelievable. You can be in commercial, and then you can be in single family rentals, and then you can be in light duty commercial space, storage. I mean, the sky's the limit. You can go so many different directions. So it's really important that you narrow in your focus on 1 or 2 areas that really seem like they're going to fit you well, and then start diving into the details a little bit more and focus on those. If you're everywhere, you're going to have a really hard time being successful in any one specific thing. So let's talk about operations a little bit. Why don't you go over the pillars that we'd like to base this around?
Yeah, so I want to go back real quick to just net operating income. So when you're talking operations, and you're talking managing your tenants, your operations, your costs, things like that, those are all going to impact the NOI. The NOI is defined simply as the income generated by a property after deducting all its operating expenses, but not financing costs or income taxes. Through your operational improvement, you're trying to get that number up as high as you can.
Yeah.
basically, and as efficiently as possible, because that NOI is a direct correlation of value to the business. So when you look at my portfolio, from day one, I've always treated each property as a business. It's not that I have 10 properties and that's the whole business. It's each one, because I need to know my NOI on that property, on this property, and on this property, because I've got to manage them all independently, because that NOI basically determines the value. You can do an NOI over the whole portfolio.
Which you'll do later on.
Correct.
When you have multiple properties, you'll have an individual, and then you'll bundle those together to give you a full picture of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. You see them sold as portfolios all the time. And so why that NOI is so important is it's used in a simple calculation to determine the value of the business. So we know about cap rates, which is basically a percentage given to an investment type or a business type based on its expected rate of return. In our market here, in regards to investment rental properties, your cap rate's between 6 and 7%. I think multifamily might be a tad higher. So your NOI goes over your cap rate, and then that's going to give you your projected value. Yeah. So an example being, if you had a duplex, after all your expenses, this is pretty far reach, but let's say you were profiting $400 a door. For that's $800 a month in profit, $9,600 a year in NOI. So you take $9,600 and you put that over a 6% cap rate. That's going to value that property just off the value from operations and profitability at $160,000. So you would be looking at a duplex simply based on value at around $160,000.
Right.
So that's why that operations part is so important, that you're minimizing costs and getting your rents to a fair price so that you can be profitable.
Now, I think that a lot of people get lost in what the cap rate means. It's kind of a complicated concept, and a lot of people don't know how to find the cap rate, and every area is different. You know, our cap rate in the Midwest, in our market, is going to be very different from the cap rate in Texas or in California or in New York or wherever. It's all going to be different.
Very different.
The best way to find out a general idea of what your cap rate is for your specific area, in my opinion, is twofold. A lot of realtors are going to know a general idea of what cap rate will be in your area. Also, banks, commercial lenders tend to know specifically that area because they work in that market all the time. And so you can go to them and say, what is the cap rate for this area?
Yeah, I asked AI.
Okay, AI.
I asked AI. I said Northwest Ohio cap rates for rental investment properties, and it gave me a couple different targets.
Yeah.
So the information's out there, even if you don't understand it and you're just looking at ballpark, get that number that you can use for your calculations. The information's out there.
Right. Now, AI is going to specifically pull from all the data and information that's online, which may not be completely accurate. True. So you may want to kind of balance that by still asking a few folks around you that you know.
See what's going on, yeah.
Yeah. But basically, I would say the simplest way to explain cap rate is if you were going to put all cash into a deal, what would your rate of return be on the capital or the cash that you put into that deal? So if you're putting $100,000 into a deal and you're going to make $10,000 on that, you have a 10% cap rate. That's the simplest way. Now, you can back into those numbers, and there are different calculations to figure out one. If you have two of them, you know, whether it's the cap rate, the net operating income, or the purchase price, you can figure the third one out. So if you have two of them, you can calculate the third.
Absolutely. Yep.
But that's just a basic understanding of what cap rate is. The return you're going to make on the money you put in if you were to purchase it all with cash.
100%.
So as far as operations go, there are three pillars basically within operations that we want to hone in on today on the podcast. Those are operational excellence, tenant experience, and financial stewardship. So let's start off with operational excellence. What does it look like from an operational standpoint? Say you buy your first deal and you need to figure out, how do I operate this thing? People will get into the rental space and jump the gun. They just want to be in it. So they go buy something and then they're like, oh shoot, now what? How do I operate this thing? How do I figure out the numbers? How do I put people in my corner that are going to be able to help me out with the different nuances, that sort of stuff? So why don't you take it and talk a little bit about what operational excellence looks like on a day-to-day basis? How do we do this?
Yeah, there's a lot of different directions for this. So for me, I mean, starting right out of the gate is I want all my properties to be operating well, efficiently, Good communication. I want my tenants to be happy, my guests to be happy in their properties, and to be taken care of. It isn't about making it a super high-end unit because the location matters. You've got to look at where your location is, that property, what neighborhood it's in. That's going to kind of dictate some of your operational changes, especially when it comes to updating, upgrading, things like that. How much do you do? Well, you don't want to take it so that you put so much money into a property that's in a neighborhood where your rent's low, because you'll never see that money again. So operationally, that wouldn't be the right call. And you don't know the tenants you're going to get in that neighborhood anyways, and if they're going to take care of that. So there's so many factors on how and what you do to a given property based on operations. Before I start even on a property, so you said, somebody rushes out and they buy one and they just get it and they're like, all right, here we go. I do a lot of this before I buy it. So I'm looking at the property. I'm trying to gather as much intel as possible. You have to get all this information. I love operations. It's like it kind of fuels me because I'm a numbers guy, so I can go in and move these things around and try to make sense of it. And so I will run all those numbers, get all that information, and I will almost start the operational implementation of what I'm going to do to that unit to get it to that next phase before I buy it.
So going in what your projection looks like down the road.
Absolutely. I do operational strategy before the purchase.
Yeah, that makes sense.
As long as I'm moving the needle with that seller and we're actually, okay, this is good, we got the offer in, I'm waiting on inspection, I'm going to work. I'm already vision casting the operations for that property. So it's just looking at that data. So I got to look at all the information. What are the rents? What's the property value? What neighborhood is it in? What class? I know we talk a lot about classes on rentals, A, B, C, D, what that property is. And then I use that to gauge my rents. When you're doing these operational strategies and vision casting, you need to get your market information, where you're at. So I had a whole housing report from our county in my folder. So when I was just looking at what the rent should be, I was using the housing report for our area.
Yeah.
Because on there's an entire breakdown of rents in our area. And what I saw was our rent range was capturing 47% of the market, the rental share basically in Defiance, right, where we were pocketed based on our grade of unit and how much our rents were going to be. So I knew that going in. So knowing your rent and then knowing your costs, making sure the unit's healthy, that it's either turnkey or you're going to go in and do value add. There's two different strategies. That's probably another episode. But mine are mostly turnkey. I'm usually buying them, ready to put somebody in them. So then you just start looking at expenses, and that's going to come down to the underwriting because I need to know all the costs. My price target on profitability is $200 to $300 a door on each unit. So what I've got to look at now is I've got to go mortgage, insurance, property taxes, the things we've talked about before, and I've got to list those out to make sure that at the bottom there's $200 to $300 still sitting there after everything's covered.
Yeah.
Now that's not paying anybody's bills. But you get 5, 6, 7 of those going, they're paying to take care of themselves, and the appreciation, they're getting paid down, and you've got those benefits. And then I review my results. I'm always following up because you can't just let it go. I watch my rates. I watch my rents. If one is still low, I don't necessarily go, whoa, that's $600 unit. I should be running that for $9. Send a text, hey, your rent's going to $9 tomorrow morning. Like that's not how we do it. But if I see that gap, it might be a notice of, hey, we're going to do $75 in a couple months here, and then we're going to do $75 again next year or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to incrementally raise it because I don't need to do it right now. I'm not trying to put anybody out of a place to live. But operationally, over the term, that makes sense. And that's being aware and mindful of both your operating expenses and your income.
Now, that's also a good thing to talk about here, I think. There are things that you have zero control over and things that you have a lot of control over in an investment, right? Some of the things that you don't have control over are location of the property. So you want to make sure you're buying a property in an area that you feel comfortable with. And everybody is going to see that differently. Some people may say, I'm okay being in the D-class neighborhoods where the houses are a little bit run down, maybe they're a little bit older, your tenants are going to maybe be a little more of a challenge to work with, or you may get your rents late, or there's a lot of nuances there. And that's okay. The profit cash flow monthly tends to be a little bit higher in those areas, but they're a lot more work typically. On the other end of the spectrum, your cash flow for the month may be a lot lower, but the property is in a much nicer B plus, A minus type neighborhood. And you really want the property for the future, but you recognize up front that your cash flow is not going to be that good. So you have to really be conscious about where it is that you want to invest before you even get started. Find property in an area that you feel comfortable with.
You got to have,
can't change it.
Yeah, you got to have your buy strategy
Right.
before you buy the first unit.
Exactly.
Don't go just grab something because it's in front of you.
Right. So there are controllables. There are things that you can control and things that you can't control. Some of the things that you can control are the numbers, like you were talking about. Depending on how you set up your operations, are going to make a big difference on the cash flow that you get every month and the value of the property, the quality of the unit, the quality of the tenant that you get.
Yeah, a lot of that is good information. Looking back at income, there's some other things you can look at on a property in regards to having some amenities on site. Some have vending machines, on-off laundry, depending on how big your facility is. A lot of times you can have some of that supplemental income and revenue streams on the same property.
Yeah, to add to that, actually, I wrote down a couple that I was thinking about as I was preparing for this episode. And lawn care. A lot of smaller units, you're going to turn over the lawn care to your tenant. They're going to be responsible for pulling weeds, mowing the yard, keeping the outside presentable. And something that you can do as a way to increase your cash flow monthly is to offer lawn care service back to them. In fact, we have a situation in our business where my son, who is 14, can go to our tenants and say, listen, if you don't want to do this, I would be happy to do it for you for X amount of dollars per time that I come and do it. And it creates a little business for him on the side, but it's additional cash flow. Great opportunity there. You can also rent your units furnished. That's something that most long-term landlords will not do, but it's a way that if you have the ability to furnish a unit and rent it to them fully furnished, you can get a far higher monthly cash flow because all they do is walk in with their clothes.
Yeah. Right.
And that works a lot for college students, for first-time renters that are leaving mom and dad's house and don't have a lot of things. It's another opportunity to rent by the room where if you have an area that you're working in or finding investments in, I should say, that have a college, have a lot of students that are potentially going to be able to rent a place, and you have 2, 3, 4 bedrooms in a place, you can rent those individually, fully furnished for far more, and your cash flow just explodes. So that's another opportunity. And then offering storage. If you have a place on your property that has an outbuilding or some storage units or extra locked closets on the outside, whatever.
Even a garage on a multi.
There you go. A lot of different opportunities there where you can say, listen, I want to use this space, but I would rent it to you for X amount of dollars if you would like to add that on to your monthly rent. And by doing that, you increase your cash flow. So that's just a couple of ideas for
great
our
points.
listeners to think about.
And looking back at lowering costs, the indirect way to increase your cash flow is just lowering your costs. So you should be shopping around for insurance. You might be able to get a better rate if you call and shop around and you bring somebody a portfolio of 10 properties and say, I'd like you guys to insure these. You might get a better rate. Financing wise, there's creative options there too. If you underwrite a deal and you're going to buy it, you can actually buy interest points, buy down your rate a little bit. It's going to cost a little more up front, but if you're looking to have cash flow to start the business, it's important that maybe you get that payment a little bit lower than it is. And even down the road, for us right now, I know we're in a season of higher interest rates. I believe there's a lot of conversation around them coming down eventually. It's really going to depend on what the whole real estate market itself does is going to dictate that. But just being able to go in later on, and let's say rates do go down to 4%, 4.5%, 5%. I may be going to the bank and having some conversation on spending a little money to do an interest rate adjust on my properties. It's going to cost you on the spot. You're going to have to write a check. But long term, that cash flow just got adjusted pretty considerably if you have a portfolio of properties that you can do that to.
One thing I will say with regard to that just came to mind, if you're interested, say you have properties already, and this is a situation where maybe your interest rate is higher than it should be, and you're recognizing that those interest rates are coming down, go to your bank and ask them for a rate and term adjustment.
Nice.
You don't need to pull money out necessarily. Maybe you have equity in the property and you want to just leave it in the property.
Yeah.
All you want to change is the rate that you're paying and the terms of the deal. So maybe it's on a 5-year adjusted and you can get more favorable terms now that you've owned the property, you've brought it to a certain standard that it's operating great.
Yeah.
You can go back to the bank and say, hey, I want to change the terms on this. I want to change the rate on this. It's called a rate and term adjustment.
Nice.
They'll look at the operations of the unit itself and they'll say, okay, you're at an 8%. We'll drop it down to a 6.75% interest rate. And instead of 5 years, we'll adjust it out to 10 years. something like that. That's not always every bank, but that's just a general example of what could happen. So you can go into your bank and talk to them about that.
Absolutely.
So this, I think, is a perfect segue into a property that you have a lot of experience in totally changing the operations and taking it from a property that maybe was not being managed well and putting your operations in place and just seeing it thrive.
Yeah, so I had come across, actually with being a realtor, I had a call from a gentleman that wanted to sell one of his triplexes. He was not living in the area anymore. It was his only property, and he wanted to sell it. Said he wasn't making anything on it really, and just wanted to kind of be done. So him and I talked, told him I was in that space, and I'm like, well, what are you looking to get out of it? And it was $85,000 or something like that. And I was like, well, I might be interested in that, because right off the rip, you divide that by 3 doors. I'm like, that's a good price per door. I'm interested. Let's at least look at it. And he's like, absolutely. Basically, he was calling me to list it, and I had talked to him through that process and said, absolutely, we can. I said, you'll get more for it if we list it. And he's like, I'm just ready to sell it and be done, because I wanted to make sure I was honest with him, because I don't want to take anything from the guy. But he said he wanted to sell it faster, more than he wanted to list it and wait and get offers and all that. And I said, okay, let's go, meet me there. Let's go look at it. So I went there, talked with him, went through it. It needed a little work in the common space, and that was where I just made my offer. I think I offered him 80 or 82 or something. I just told him, I said, I'm going to put a few thousand in that common space, but I said, I'll do 82 tomorrow if you'll take it. And he's like, I just talked to my brother yesterday, and I was telling him that was going to be my bottom number. I just wanted to get at least 80 for it. I said, I'm in, I'll buy it. So I bought it. What I was doing is, as I was getting information, I was trying to figure out why he would want to sell it at that price and stuff, but being a triplex. But then I started getting the rent prices that he had in place. Then I started getting the utility explanation. So he was renting these 3 units for $450-ish a month.
Wow.
Each, and he was paying all the utilities for the entire building.
No wonder he wasn't making any money.
There's no money there. It all had electric heat. So in the winter month, like I got a utility bill in February for this property for $1,400.
Oh my gosh.
So like
That'll eat into your profits.
But the guy that was selling it was awesome, because I knew all that ahead of time. When I asked him for utility information, he sent me a year's worth of statements. So I was able to see all this ahead of time of buying it. But that was where I just started looking at the pieces. But again, this is the importance of operations, because I bought it and it wasn't going to make anything. I was going backwards on the buy, but I had already done my operational forecasting. This is going to be a profitable unit when I'm done.
Right.
And I didn't have to take rents to market. I kept rents below market, but it was looking at that and going, okay, I'm going to take all these utility expenses that I got to pay over the course of a year. I'm going to average them out, and I'm going to split that over the 3 units. Then it's like, I got to raise rents now. And I had to raise rents considerably. But again, I didn't go to each person and say, your rents are going up $250 each. Yeah. It was, we're going to do 100 this year and maybe 100 next year. It was like, let's spread them out. But I said, your rent's going to go up. I'm still going to pay all your utilities. So ultimately, they're still paying probably $600 a month in rent, and all their utilities are covered. And they're probably, if you figure $200 a month in utilities.
Yeah.
So they're right around that $700-800 mark in rent with all utilities covered. So they're still getting good rent.
Where in the world can you go and get that kind of rent?
Yeah. Right now you can't.
With everything included.
Everything's included.
Even that price is just unheard of.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So for them, it worked out. It was a little bit of frustration at first, which I totally understand. Nobody wants I don't want my bills to go up tomorrow. I don't want somebody to call me and say, your bills just went up. But at the same time, I tell them, I said, I'm not trying to get rich or gouge anyone. I have a process. I have a system. And I think sometimes just being honest with them. I think I had told the one tenant, I was like, look, I won't raise your rent. But I said, I'll send you your third of the bill. And that was in winter. So the bill was like $1,100. And I'm like, you just send me a third of this. And then all of a sudden he's like, it's fine. Let's just do that. I was like, okay. I said, awesome. I said, I promise you, I'm not trying to sit up here and take advantage. I just have a business to run, and I'm trying to be fair with it. So having that operational vision on that property, doing some of the small updates, looking and reviewing the rents in the area, assessing where those maybe should be a little bit, and making sure that based on my expenses again. Now, if I had a higher mortgage, the rents would probably have to be higher, but I bought it at a good price. I bought it right. So for them, it was a good thing because the rents only went up as much as they did. Utilities all still included, and I can still profit on that unit in my portfolio the way I need to. And that was 100% operations.
Right. So it's not necessarily what you buy it for, but what opportunity it has to grow and increase in the future.
Yep. That's exactly it. You got to have that vision, and you still have to buy it as it is.
Yeah.
Because you, at the end of the day, you as the investor, you're taking the risk. I could have bought that, and things worked out really well. Got some great tenants there, but it's one of those things. The risk is ours. I could have raised the rents, and all three of them could have vacated.
Yeah.
Now I have a property that I have to pay everything for, and there's no income at all covering those expenses. So the risk is ours. So you got to buy it where it is, not where you're taking it.
Yeah, that's a great thought. I actually just recently purchased another triplex, and it was a similar scenario that rents had been somewhere in the low 400s for 10 or 15 years, never increased. The owner didn't pay any attention to this triplex. The tenants had been there forever because it was convenient, it was cheap, and nobody was pushing them out the door. So when I purchased the property, it was very similar to that. It's like, listen, everywhere else in the area, market rates are at $1,100 a month, and you're paying $400. And so, you kind of work with them. I've even had conversations. I don't know if this will help anybody in particular that's already an investor or who plans to be, but another tactic that I'll typically use is I want to be transparent and conversational with our tenants and even friendly. There has to be a dividing line between professionalism and kind, friendly, relatable. But at the same time, I will go and sit down with the tenant and say, listen, you have been paying X dollars for X amount of time. And we've done market research and we understand that this area, we can rent this very unit for X number.
Yep.
Now, we understand that we're not going to be able to just take you to that number, but we want to understand where you're at. What can you afford? And then let's come to some sort of an agreement. By having that simple conversation, a lot of times you'll receive a number above what you were even thinking you would initially take them to.
Yeah.
So for example, if they're at 400 and market rate is 1,100 and you go to them and say, listen, market rate's $1,100 and you're paying 400. What are you capable of paying? Let's meet somewhere that we can both get comfortable with.
Yeah.
That tenant may say, well, I don't really want to do 1,100, but I could do 900. Would that be okay? And in your mind the whole time you're thinking, well, I was only going to charge them $750, but if they're comfortable with 900, that gets me closer to where I need to be anyway.
Right.
I'm happy, they're happy, we move forward.
Yep.
But by just throwing a number out there and saying, well, now you're paying 600 or 700 or 800, whatever it is, it's almost like a trigger for them that's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not complying with you. I'd rather go pay more over here than stay where I'm at just because you're being a jerk and demanding what it is that you want. You kind of have that middle ground with a tenant and they feel like they're being seen and heard. And that's a huge benefit. It has been many times for me in the past.
That's good. Yeah, sometimes that works, and that's how we always try to start there with working with the people. But sometimes you got the tenant that's just not having it. They're not happy. And it's like you almost have to just tell them there's other places to rent.
Yeah, you have to cut ties at times.
Then all of a sudden they're either quiet and everything's fine again, or they're still frustrated. Yeah.
Believe it or not, more times than not. We had to do that in several instances where the tenant was just like belligerent and upset and
frustrated.
It's just like, listen, we've tried to be personable and reasonable, but the bottom line is this is the number that we have to get. So we're setting that in place as of this date, and then everything seems to get quiet. More times than not, they won't move out. They'll just comply and we move forward and everything is good. You still want to take care of your tenant.
You do 100%.
No matter what. That's a big part of both operational excellence and then the second part of this, which is the tenant experience. You need to have this balance of understanding that your tenants are humans. They have a life to live. They have a certain budget. But then also on the flip side of that, you're running a business. That business is there to make profit. And so you have to find the balance in between the two. It's a people business, but it also has to be profitable. So talk to me a little bit about tenant excellence in your experience. What have you had to do or deal with tenants to maybe improve their experience while they're a guest with you?
Mine's primarily focused around communication and also timeliness.
Okay.
When it comes to tenant experience, I'm not going to be that landlord that you text with an issue and I'm like, I'll be over there in 2 weeks, maybe that Thursday, the 23rd, with a tennis racket, and I'll see if I can get your water heater to turn back on. Like, I don't want to
With
be, like, I don't want to be that landlord that is taping stuff up maybe in a couple weeks and hoping it holds. Like, if you're having a problem, there's times I'll come do it. I'll come look at it and fix it, or I'll have somebody else come do it. And I try really hard to focus on timely turnaround for those things, those repairs, those issues, and also just communication.
Yep.
Hey, what's going on? Even if one of the contractors or somebody's got to order a part or it's going to take a few more days, I'm going to let that tenant know. Hey, thanks for being understanding. Do you need anything? Do you need space heaters for a little bit? I'll go grab some while we get that gas valve for your furnace replaced.
Had to do that before.
I just need them to know I'm here, I'm present, and I'm going to take care of it. You're not on an island. If you work with me, I'm going to get it done. So for me, tenant experience is about communication and addressing things. Now, I can't do everything every tenant wants all the time because sometimes they're asking you to change the cabinets in the kitchen or new countertops. I'm like, this is an HGTV. This is a rental.
Right.
I can't come in there and remodel it for you. If you would like to paint the rooms a certain color, as long as you stay away from these colors, I'm totally okay with that. Be careful, do a good job. But, sometimes they want certain things and it's like, that's not happening right now. If your furnace goes out or you've got a plumbing, I'm going to take care of it. I had a backup up in Bryan and I was getting frustrated with that being an issue for a couple tenants up there. And I'm like, I got somebody else. We just had that excavated. I think we talked about that maybe in an earlier episode. Went up, dug up the main sewer line and replaced it. I'm like, I got to get this thing flowing because I don't want to live in a place where my water's backing up into the house. So I don't make my tenants do that. So it's communication, timeliness, being responsive.
Yeah.
I think people value that.
Perceived value is something in my mind that tenants are focused on. They want to feel like they're important to you. And the moment they feel like you have better things to do and you don't care about their life and their situation, you're going to lose a sense of respect, and probably that tenant, when it comes time to renew for the following year, they're going to wash their hands of you and move on, which puts you in a position where you have to go in, remodel the unit, get it prepared for another tenant, costs you significant money potentially, and then you have to go find another tenant, hopefully one that's as good or better than the one before.
Right.
So increasing perceived value is really important. That actually is important when you're getting a unit ready to rent to somebody. They don't care about whether the electrical outlet is new wiring. They care that it's clean, it has nice flooring, that the paint is fresh, that things are orderly, there's nothing broken or messy or anything like that.
Totally agree.
It's important that you have excellence in every single thing that you do. That's part of our character and our integrity behind owning this business to begin with, is to steward well what it is that the Lord has given us to steward. Mm-hmm. Part of that is giving our tenants an excellent experience.
Totally agree.
Finally, I want to talk just briefly about financial stewardship and what that looks like from a place of business when it comes to rental properties specifically, or investing as an investor specifically. Do you have some pointers that you can talk about from a financial stewardship perspective?
If you're looking at it with having tenants, your goal is financially basically to keep your occupancy high, keep your cash flow strong, and it allows you to steward well with those financial resources. And there's a lot of costs associated with losing tenants, like you were saying a minute ago, turnover. I think a key point is for being able to steward well financially in this space is tenant retention. I like to call them guests because that's how I hope they feel instead of a tenant.
Right.
I have a lot of great tenants, and I'd love them all to just stay and keep renting. Now, they won't all stay and rent. A lot of them find a place, or they'll buy a home, or they'll move into something else, or find new employment. But your turnover rate being high, things like that, your occupancy being low is all going to impede your ability to steward those financial resources. So it's so important that we do take this seriously, and we do make sure that we are treating our tenants as guests and making them feel valued and heard through the process, because they'll stick around and they'll rent. And then you can use the proceeds for being able to give back to the church or a charity or an organization that you stand behind.
Yeah, I feel the same way, that financial excellence will give you the opportunity to use the profits and the increased value for something greater. And if you're able to steward the small things that the Lord entrusts you with, maybe it's a single family rental, and you do that well, and there's excellence there, that will then turn into 2 units and 4 units and 8 units. And before long, you have a massive portfolio that's bringing in significant cash flow that you can then turn around and use for something greater.
Yeah, absolutely. Your foundation has to be strong in regards to your own personal finances and problem solving. I heard a short online. I thought it was really cool. If you can't solve a $10 problem, you will never be trusted with a $100 problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't solve a $100 problem, you're never going to be trusted with a $1,000 problem. So you better get your money right. You better take finances seriously, the numbers seriously, and do whatever it takes to make sure that you are treating your guests properly and that you're profitable and you're growing. Because God will entrust you with more, just like you said a minute ago. If you're solving those problems well and managing what's been given to you well, you'll have more. Right. And then you better be able to manage that well. So you can't get comfortable. You can't get content and settle in because you're doing it okay right now. You better be getting better every day, because if you want more, it'll come to you, but you better be mastering what you have now.
Yeah. Complacency is a cancer.
Yeah. You'll stagnate.
Yeah.
And if a business is stagnant, it's going backwards.
Right.
And you're going to bankruptcy. You just are. If you're not growing and you're not watching your margins over time and keeping an eye on those KPIs and those numbers through your financial stewardship of your business, you're going backwards and you're going to go out of business.
Yeah. KPI is key performance indicators. Yeah. We have a lot of acronyms that we use in the real estate space, not realizing that not everybody knows what that thing means.
And I'm a numbers guy. I need Jake to remind me that I got to slow down and not just throw the letters out there, but to inform the listeners that what that thing actually means. But,
right. Which I guess that's kind of what I'm here for. When I see you or hear you say something that I'm like, nobody knows what you just said. I got to pull it back and say, what does that actually mean?
I need that. I do. But I use those when I'm looking at the numbers to make the next decision. It's all about making informed decisions based on what the data is showing you and making sure it's a good decision.
Right. So key performance indicators are a big part of you looking at the big picture to make an educated decision.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's well said.
Let's give the listeners some things that they can implement in their business for efficiency. I'll start. The thing that I'm thinking of is automating rent collection. We both have a similar automated system where tenants have an app. That's what they use to put in maintenance requests. It's what they use to sign their lease agreements. It's what they use to pay their rents. It automates late fees, however you set them up. There's a lot of things that you can use within that app to simplify your life.
It's amazing.
And so that's one major thing that I would recommend for new landlords.
Yeah.
Plug into a system that'll do a lot of these operations for you so that you don't have to try to manually do them like they did 10, 20, 30 years ago. You know, I'm older than Google. So are you.
Yeah, we're 40.
That's unbelievable.
Two old guys trying to sit here and do a podcast together.
Yeah.
And
how did they do it 30, 40, 50 years ago when none of this stuff was available to us?
I don't know. I was early on and I got right into a platform right away that did that. But even in my first few collections, it's driving around, grabbing a check and taking cash to the bank and depositing it. And it's like, I couldn't imagine. And then let's not talk about the postal service and waiting on checks to get there that may not get there. Right. And you're going to hear the excuses. When's it real? When's it not real? I couldn't imagine, but having a platform for that sends out automated reminders, rent's due. Hey, your rent's still due. You're on day 3. Rent's now late. I have saved a tremendous amount of time by having an automated platform, even for the 17 doors we have. It's just made it almost seamless.
Right. I've used several different platforms. I really like the platform that we're on now, but it does all of that stuff for you. I know of landlords even still that I can think of in the back of my mind that have 30, 40, 50 units that they travel to every single month to collect their rent. And to me, it is just mind-blowing. I couldn't imagine doing that for days at the beginning of every month. And hearing the stories that you're going to hear, the excuses of why they couldn't pay, come back in a week, or whatever. Yeah. So I would recommend finding an automated system that works really well for you.
Huge tip.
Will eliminate 80% of the operation nightmares that you have to deal with in this business.
Do it on property too. Don't sit there and wait. Be like, well, I'm not big enough. I can go grab a couple. Do it on property too.
Yeah.
Like if you got 3 doors, get it on a platform and start integrating it and learning it because it's a game changer. So that's a great tip.
Do you have another system in mind that you can think of that maybe you guys implement with your tenants?
What I've done with communications is I have a Google number that I use that's separate from my cell phone number.
Oh man, that's a huge one.
Having them communicate with me through a Google number, that's just where all my tenants are.
Yeah.
So if I have that logo, I know it's a tenant issue. And so you can gauge communication and timeliness on that. And it's a separate thing.
Yeah.
And they call that number or they text that number. And it just helps you know what needs answered, what doesn't, and doesn't muddy up the text messaging and thing. I couldn't imagine if you had all your tenants in your main text messages. So it's nice to have that all in one spot to go back to refer to because it's just tenant issues. It's just property issues.
Yeah.
And I really value that because you've got to sometimes go back to that database and be like, did I say something to X tenant back when this happened, And going down through my current text messages and my personal phone number it'd be a mess to go back and dig for all that. So yeah, having a Google number over a personal number with all your tenants is probably a smart move.
Yeah, separate your personal and your business, if at all possible. I still struggle with this particular situation where my tenants have my phone number from way back when. And so naturally, they call or text me personally at all times of the day or night, which is not necessarily a bad thing in a lot of cases because I can communicate closely with them. I know what's happening. If there's a major issue that I need to take care of, they know they can get a hold of me. But on the flip side of that, you're on call 24/7.
Yeah.
And that can be hard. And honestly, it's probably the main reason why people don't get into this business. They're deterred by having to be on call with their tenants at all times. And it's not as bad as people say. But bottom line is that can be avoided with one simple process. And that process is we don't give our personal number out. We have a Google Voice number. Everything flows through that Google Voice number. We have daily operating hours that you can contact us, normal business hours, Monday through Friday, maybe part-time or something on Saturday. And outside of that window, there's a separate number, or you put in a maintenance request. If it's not an absolute emergency, that's what the app is for. Go into it, put a maintenance request in. We will see it on Monday morning. We'll get in contact with you. We'll fix it and we'll move forward. If you run it like a business, it's not so overwhelming
100%.
and
Great
a
point.
pain.
Yeah, great point. A good tip for those out there that might be starting out is not everything needs addressed right away. There are some things that can wait till tomorrow morning. I'll never forget when I started, I had a text about a screen door coming off of its cylinder basically, and it was just swung open. And this was at like 12:30 at night, and I answered the text. And then it's like, I'll get this in the morning. You know what I mean? Like that can wait.
Right.
I don't want anybody without heat or to have a water line broke. But I was answering a text about a screen door at 12:30 at night, and I'm like, okay, this can wait till tomorrow. And I wish I had that, realization sooner. But I was trying so hard to be good and communicate so well. Some things can wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are just a couple of tips. I'm sure if we thought about it, we could come up with all kinds of little nuances. Or like, now that we've done this 3 or 4 or 5 times, we recognize I shouldn't have done it that way. I should really have done it this way. The more you think about it, the more you think about all the things that you could have done differently. I would recommend finding a good core group of people that you can surround yourself with. Great realtor, a great handyman, a great electrician and plumber. Those guys that you can relate to, that you communicate well with. You can even be friendly with those people and you have them in your corner. So you can get a hold of them at a moment's notice and say, listen, this situation happened. How do I fix it? Or how soon can you be there to fix it?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if you have those relationships, those people who are professional in their field will drop whatever it is that they're doing to come help you out because the relationship that you've built with them. So it's not just necessarily about building a relationship with the tenant, although it is, and you want to take care of them. It's also about building relationships and networking closely with the people in your community to find that core group of people that you have in your corner and you can pull from when you need, and vice versa. Be in their corner.
Right.
If they need advice on their first rental property, or maybe they have a couple and you can step aside from what you're doing in your daily operations to go over here and help them out, work with them, it's going to pay off for you in the future. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Be willing to serve, be willing to contribute and add value to somebody else, and it'll come tenfold.
That was something I was just thinking about on Sunday, was being a servant to all. In fact, I think I sent a message. We have a couple guys that we're in like a chat group, and we just encourage each other and talk a little bit about what it means to be
you did.
a man and a father and a husband and a godly influence and example. And I sent something out. I can't remember exactly how it went, but something like good parent, faithful husband, servant to all. And I feel like that's so impactful because it really gives us a broad perspective on how we as men are supposed to live our daily life. Yeah. And we can use those three things in pretty much every area of our personal life or our business life to make us better and ultimately those around us better.
Yeah, 100%.
We want to be great parents to our kids, try our best daily to do the right thing every time. Are we going to get it wrong? You bet we are. Yeah. Every single day, it seems like something comes up and we're like, gosh, I wish I would have handled that differently. You recognize it. You apologize in the situation. If you need to, you go to that kid. Faithful and loving to your spouse. They need that encouragement. Your wife needs your support and love. She needs you to cherish her. And then servant to all, which encompasses everybody, every experience, everything that you do. You should be focused on, how can I serve this person or this situation better?
Yep.
What do I have that I can give and serve to make them better or this situation better? I think we need to keep that in mind as investors to our tenants, as friends to those close around us, and everything that we come in contact with. So I think it's really vital that we keep that in the back of our mind. Hopefully you guys have found this to be interesting. We can go into so many operational nuances, and we can do multiple episodes on this, I'm sure, but this is a little teaser maybe and some good information to get everybody started. So let's circle back and pull this whole thing together by explaining what it is that we've talked about today. Can you do that for us, Sean?
Absolutely. So when you're looking into this space, we're primarily talking a lot about rentals and investment properties, but you're looking at NOI and operations. So the first point we gave earlier was operational excellence. That's really putting a lot of value and focus on the numbers, building, making sure that you're running a profitable business. Number two was tenant experience. This is really a people business, like Jake said earlier, and you've got to focus on the guests and the tenants and the people and make sure there's good communication, there's good retention, and that you're doing well by your tenants. And number three was financial stewardship. We're entrusted with these resources so that we use them and steward them well to give back to those around us, the communities. And so it's important that we make sure we're tracking those numbers and taking it seriously. And when we're solving a problem, we continue to grow that. We get entrusted with a little, God will entrust you with a lot if you steward it well. And then we talked about two little tips that I think were really helpful. One is focusing on getting an automated software platform of some sort that you can put your properties and tenants into that will handle a lot of your communications and rent collection. It's a really great system. And making sure you separate business and personal. So have that Google phone number or something where your tenants can communicate with that number specifically in regards to your properties.
Absolutely. We're going to come back with episode 10 and talk a lot more about relationships and how people are put into our lives for a reason, for a season, or for a lifetime. Those three are pretty much the primary experiences that we're going to see in our relationships. And so I hope you guys will tune in next week to episode 10 when we talk about that. Go find us on the platform that you listen to podcasts on. Find us on YouTube. We have a lot of shorts on there that y'all can hook up with, and we would love for you to interact with us. So put a comment in wherever you're listening and subscribe. We would love for you guys to get involved and to create a community and to communicate with what it is that we're trying to build. We hope you guys have an awesome week. Thanks for joining us today on Courageous Stewards, where legacy meets leadership and faith fuels the journey.
If this episode stirred something in you, share it with someone who's ready to step boldly into their calling. Subscribe, leave a review, and stay connected as we continue to explore what it means to lead with conviction, serve with excellence, and build with eternity in mind.
So until next time, keep showing up, keep stewarding well, and remember, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's obedience in motion.